Should have mainlined more coffee. That's how we begin the Bid Nerds. Welcome to yet another episode of the Bid Nerds. My name is John Polnik. I am your host, along with my partner, Michael Deeb. He's coming to you live from San Francisco Bay in California, where I is coming to you. You like that? There's some grammar for the morning. I am coming to you live from Las Vegas on the Las Vegas Strip. This is your daily nerd out on the most interesting cars on Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer. We do this every day during about the 9 o'clock hour. We talk about all the really cool cars that come up on Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer, and we give you predictions and analysis and markets or all that kind of stuff. We don't know what we're talking about, but we do have fun. How you doing this morning, Michael Deeb?
Good, man. Not bad. We're heavy Japanese today, Jan. I don't know if you noticed, there's 3 Japanese cars on our list today.
I like that. I like that a lot. You know, it actually gives me a fighting chance. Not that I'm a big JDM guy, but I can't compete with you against all this Italian stuff. You know all the Italian cars. And it's like, oh, hey, dude, today we're doing another Alfa, something that I've never heard of.
Yeah. Trust me, I stashed a 50s Alfa in there, my little ace in the hole.
All right. He's stacking the deck in his favor. Yesterday, we did a live viewing of a 944 that both of us actually had some actual interest in, and that car kind of turned out to be a weird, maybe fishy scam. Who knows, really? But we had an interesting day. Our predictions, we do keep track of them. We see who's better at this than the other. So far, clearly, I am.
Yes.
Okay, just threw that down. Actually, that's not necessarily that clear, but I have been pretty lucky lately. Although yesterday you did start to catch up a little bit. You want to go over the results from yesterday?
Yeah, let's cover the results really quickly, and then I think you should tell the audience what happened yesterday with that 944. So, we were all Bring a Trailer yesterday. All the auctions were on Bring a Trailer. So we started with the car you picked, the 75 BMW 2002 Bauer convertible. This is an English-built car, or an English modification to a German BMW. Just really cool car. You don't see them in the U.S. very often. It did not look like it had any life in this auction. Not a lot of bids, not a lot of money on the table when we reviewed it. So I said 9 and you bid under 35. And we both lamented that even on Bring a Trailer, it might find its audience in that 55 to 65 range. Well, that car actually brought $52,600 and sold at that price. Great result, I think, for both the buyer and the seller. There's the 83 Porsche 944. I said 6,800. You bet the over at 7, and then that car jumped from 4,900 to $10,001 and sold. You won the auction, but you and I have a lot of things to say about that one. Really quickly, that really cool Viola metallic, that 1993 964 C4 Jubilee 30-year anniversary wide body all-wheel drive coupe, which I just think is just awesome, unobtainium. I went 145. You bet the under at 144, and that car actually brought 152,000. Wow! And it's sitting in Canada. John, somebody still has to pay $8,000 to get that thing across the border, which is that's a big investment in that car. And again, that car had 84,000 kilometers, I think. So it's like 45,000 miles. That's not like it's a spring chicken. Anyways, then we looked at the 2011 BMW 1M. I said 66. You bet the over at 70. Now that car split us at 68.5, but you won because you were closer. And then the Jeep Wrangler, I said 27, and you bet the under at 26, thinking that the owner was leaving a lot of money on the table, the consignor, for not putting it in a more Jeep-focused forum. That car still brought $32,500, which was over both of our bids, but you still feel that car should or could bring 40 to the right audience. And so anyways, I won that one. I got 3, you got 2. But John, tell us what was so weird about that 944.
Well, hold on a second. I mean, yeah, the Jeep Wrangler for sure was definitely kind of it was just the wrong platform, straight up wrong platform. And I just wanted to make that really clear what was going on there. That Jeep was definitely worth more, even though I underbid it. So, but yeah, the 944, boy, we start, this is one of those things where it's all about doing your homework, right? There's reading the ad, there's looking at the pictures. The pictures yesterday on all the cars were terrible, and so these pictures were kind of deceiving. They were good enough to kind of hide some glaring issues, and then when you read now, something I think people don't understand about Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer. As the owner of the car, you submit your car, you fill out a bunch of fields, and you answer questions. It's up to Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer to actually write the copy in the ad. So the owners of these cars are not the ones that are writing the copy. So
Correct.
Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer, let's put it this way, they like to put a rose on it, right? They want to make the car look as good as possible because they do want people to buy them. That's how they make their money. They don't make any money really if the car doesn't sell.
They're financially incentivized for your lot to reach its reserve that they set. So yes, there is a conflict of interest there.
So, now I'm not going to go ahead and say that they're covering things up, but let's just say they're not focusing on things that maybe you or I would as a car buyer. So you really have to start, and that's the great thing about Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer is the community and the comment section. You can ask the seller questions, and other people in the community can answer those questions, and people that know these cars or any car that might be on the list can really be involved, right? It's that interactivity. It's that crowdsourcing of information that's very, very cool about these platforms. And so sure enough, this seller clearly didn't know anything about this car. I mean, it became pretty obvious that this person was someone who probably came across this car and probably got excited about the Porsche buzz and thought they could make a buck. And their answers to questions were not just like uninformed, but obviously dodgy. Like they were avoiding answering questions, and they were trying to add the flowers to their answers as well. I mean, it was just one pile of happy BS after the other. And other people started commenting. There were people from the community that were making very substantive comments about problems that the car obviously had, and the seller didn't respond to any of that. But they did respond to silly questions that really didn't matter. So, and then in the end, someone came in and, the car was sitting around just under $5,000 with three or four bids in the last, hour. And then someone like 10 minutes before the end of the auction bid twice as much. They bid $10,001, which to me sounds like someone basically saying, all right, we're just going to end this auction. I'm going to pay the fee. And what's that?
They bid $5,100 above the auction price at $4,900.
More than 50%.
That's 100% increase. And immediately all the people that were engaged in that auction platform were like, that was fishy. Yeah. And then it closed. So that was really weird how that car moved along.
Well, so there it is. I mean, it's not all flowers and bells on these platforms. We don't like situations like that because we think it's bad for the platform, and we like, both Michael and I love these platforms, and really like what you can get out there. So anyways, be careful out there. Do your homework. Listen to shows like ours. Realize that nobody knows what the hell they're talking about, and be informed and be an informed buyer. There it is. Let's talk about today's cars. Shall we?
Yeah, we shall.
All right.
So, John, I know you and I have the cars in a certain order, but I think we should jump around and juxtapose the Nissan and the Toyota together. So let's start on Cars and Bids with the car you selected, a 1986 Nissan 300ZX Turbo with the T-tops. You just don't see these cars very often anymore at all. The earlier versions of the Z cars, the 240s, and of course now eventually the 60s and 80s, the 260s and 280s that are basically on the same platform, those cars are starting to bring real collector money. So it begs the question, are these 80s 300Zs with the turbos sort of the next cars to jump? And here out of LA, California is a really nice example that I think you've petitioned for our audience to consider. It's got 68,000 miles. It's a manual transmission, rear-wheel drive. It's got the T-tops. This is Radwood Gold. Doug DeMiro is fawning all over this. He says he loves the car and was talking about how some of the features on it was sort of like Nissan's reflection of where the future of the automobile was going to go. He said the car talks to you. So I imagine this is one of those cars that says you need to lock the doors or you left your keys in the ignition.
Your door is ajar.
Yeah, I had kind of forgotten about that until I read Doug's take, and it really, really made me laugh, and it really made me feel old because immediately I heard the Hoff, what's his name, Hasselhoff and Kit,
Knight Rider.
But then, Knight Rider, that's what it was. And so I was just cracking up. This was really funny. But anyway, really nice car, JP. 15 bids is not really a lot of action. The car's at just 10,500. These cars were about $26,000 when they were brand new, and they're not particularly powerful. 200 horsepower, 230 pound-foot of torque is not a lot from a 3-liter turbocharged. It's not what you'd expect today. I've never driven one. I don't even know if I've been in one, but they're, it's just kind of a cool car to look at. Not my favorite. I wouldn't ever want to own one, but there you go. 300ZX Turbo from the 80s.
Oh, man, I so love these. This is one of those cars, one of those platforms that has been languishing in undervalued hell. I think there's been some amazing values to get these if you wanted one. This is, like you said, all Radwood royalty. I mean, look at that interior. The digital dash. I mean, you're shooting down, spaceships with this thing. I mean, this is like driving Space Invaders right here. This is the Atari 2600 with wheels.
Great take.
Here's the thing. I mean, 200 horsepower sounds like a ridiculously low amount of horsepower, but think of its contemporaries. At that time, when I was just getting into cars, this car was the car, or one of the cars that was popular, about when I was getting my driver's license. I think you as well, right? The cars I was really into, or were really into, was like, Scirocco's and GTIs and stuff like that. And those cars, a 16-valve Scirocco, which was basically unobtainium, had 117 horsepower, not even 100, not even close to 130, right? So 200 was like, whoa. And on top of that, this is a rear-wheel drive car. This is a sports car, man. I mean, as much as I have much love as I have for my Volkswagen roots, this was oh my God. I mean, kind of tail happy, but still handled way better than any kind of American muscle car. Actually had a little bit of low end torque because it was a 6-cylinder, and then had a big pop at the top end. These cars were so much fun. I remember test driving one. I remember convincing a car dealership to let me test drive one by myself.
That's
morons,
crazy.
right?
Yes,
I went out.
seriously.
And drove the tar out of that car. And by the time I got back, it was, oh my gosh, I so wanted one, but they were really expensive. Now, here's the thing. They ultimately became cheap because they are very, very, very 80s in their style, right? They did not age well into the 90s and the aughts.
And the follow-up to this that Nissan made was so modern and so forward-thinking. It was really a beautiful car. And I think that car still stands up today, whereas this car is so angular and so 80s. It's so period specific. It's interesting to see how this car has aged with pop-up headlights and impact bumpers that are body color and stuff like that. Remember now, $26,000 in 1986 would have bought you one of those the Corvette platform had just come out. It had just been redone in 84. And those cars were good for like 150 miles an hour. Yeah. And so people were going nuts over the Corvette. So this was really for the guy who didn't follow the crowd, I think,
Well, I mean, yeah, and look, here's the 1986, right? This is the car that we're talking about. If you look at the very next year, they did a big upgrade to it. They really smoothed out the edges. This became a much more modern-looking car, but it was a little too late for the time because there was too much other stuff. So, I actually, this white one that I'm showing you is just a rando example of the next year, next body style. The 87, 88, and 89s, I think if there's a car out there that is undervalued, that has that's going to have a moment, these are the ones to find. If you can find one of these, a clean one, these are going to pop. But that doesn't mean that our little 86 is not something that that I think is going to have a moment too. I think these are going to do kind of the same thing, honestly, that the Alfa Romeo Spiders are going to do. The Alfa Romeo Spiders, there's so many of them. They've been so cheap for so long and kind of underappreciated, and I think they're about to have a moment. This is a much better car than an Alfa Romeo Spider. You're going to have a heck of a lot more fun. Anyways, a super clean one, a turbo. They did have some problems. The turbos were not the most reliable ones. The regular naturally aspirated ones, probably an easier car to own. The parts for these turbos are going to be harder to come by, but you're not talking about super expensive. We're not talking about Ferrari money here.
Well, somebody's gone through this car, JP. In 2020, they've got all the timing belts and auxiliary belts, a lot of hoses and thermostats and things and sensors have all been updated on this car. So the only real flaws are minor cosmetic things that I think you'd expect from a 68,000 mile car. But it looks like mechanically this car has really been gone through, like way more than a major service has been done to this car. So I would think the next guy, like the winner of this lot, could probably enjoy this car and have a little bit of fun with it and take it out and drive it, which you and I, of course, both hope to do. I mean, look at this car, that opening photo, what looks to be like the West Coast sunset, out there in LA. I mean, does it get any more classic than that? T-tops, and some old aviator sunglasses.
There you go. This is a Top Gun car. And let's talk about photography for just a moment. Photography sells cars. Now, these pictures were obviously done by an amateur. These are not pro photos, right? No. But we have a video coming out, the top 5 tips on how to make the most money on your car for sale on Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer through photography. And one of our tips is to shoot the car during the right time of day. This person chose the golden hour. They have the car facing the right direction. You don't need super expensive equipment. You don't need to be a photographer to be able to take really nice pictures. And this picture represents this car very well. It's not a pro photo. They didn't get too cute with the background. They didn't put it up against some mural or something like that and try to be, oh, look, I'm an artist. The background is far enough away. You got a little bit of a sunset and you see the whole car and it's not cropped. This is a nice amateur photo. And, I think if you're placing an ad, make sure you take the time to get good photos. If you don't know how to do it, if you don't know how to do it, so find someone that does. Okay, so what's your bid on this car, Michael Deeb? We got to move on.
Yeah, they're not great photos, but at least the guy tried. So I had originally bid 12,000, but I'm going to add $500 to it. So I'm going to say 12,500, and it sells.
Okay, Again, I think it's time for these to have a moment. I don't know if a couple days before Christmas is the moment. It looks like there's some action on here. I think if this car were on a different platform, maybe Bring a Trailer, it might do better. But I don't know. Doug DeMuro really likes this car, and I think there's a lot of JDM people on the Doug DeMuro platform. So I'm gonna go way over. I'm gonna go 15. And that's that's kind of aspirational for this car. I think that's what this car should be worth, if not more. 68,000 miles. Honestly, I think this should be a $20,000 car, Michael Deeb. I mean, if you ever drive one of these, for that money.
Right.
Man, I don't know what else you can get that has this much panache, this much just eyeball, this much. I mean, the condition. I know I'm just going gaga over this car, but I really like it.
I think it's sacrilege that any car that's not Italian wears bright red paint, but I would love to see that car in bright red. I think it would look really cool. Yeah. Okay, so let's juxtapose. Let's juxtapose its cousin. And so here we're going to look at a original owner, 1991 Toyota Supra Turbo 5-speed, 83,000 miles out of Jupiter, Florida. This car has a Targa top, not the T-tops, but I mean, it's got to have a very similar feel. Again, we're looking at a 3-liter inline 6 with a turbo and a 5-speed manual with a limited slip differential. Car's got 16-inch alloy wheels. The limited slip, I think, is a big thing because I imagine this car is probably a really great driver. And, it's kind of contemporary looking, but it doesn't take a lot of chances from a design standpoint. This was right at the era where people were starting to appreciate how reliable and what a great value a Japanese car was compared to, an American Corvette that might go 140, 150 miles an hour, but it also probably rattled and felt like the wings of the doors were going to fall off at that speed as well. So these were great cars, and this one is getting its due. Now, this car was only 29,500 when it was brand new, JP. It's got 83,000 miles, 20,000 more than our Nissan, and it's 5 years younger. Yet this car is sitting at $16,000 on Bring a Trailer rather than Cars and Bids. And yet it's only got 6 bids. Not a lot of action, but somehow a bigger audience. So, what do you think? How does this car compare, and what do you think of it for the money?
Well, you got to love in the 80s. What was the big movie in the 80s? Back to the Future. Doc Brown. Mm-hmm. What was the thing he liked to say all the time? Heavy. This car, that's the one word that comes to mind when you think of this generation of Toyota Supra, is a very, very, very heavy car. These things, I mean, honestly, this thing is more like a Camry with a hot motor and a target top than it is a sports car. The 300Z is so much better car.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now this car makes 230 horsepower and 255 pound-foot of torque. So it is a little bit more powerful. What you're saying is you don't feel it because the car is a lot heavier.
It's heavier, softer. It's just not. These just aren't sports cars. Now the Supra that comes after this is the most famous Supra. Now, remember this car. This one. What year is this one? I'm sorry. This is
91.
Yeah, so when this car was sitting in showroom floors, right across the street at the Nissan dealership was the new style 300ZX. I mean, these two cars were priced about the same. They were pitted against one another, and it was laughable. The idea that you would choose the Supra over the 300Z was just like, come on. I mean, there was zero comparison. One, it's not. You know what it's kind of like? It's kind of like the Aston Martin Vantage compared to a 911 when Aston Martin came out with their Vantage going, we're gonna sell these more than Porsches because it's like, no, they're not anything like. One is kind of a lumbering GT car that's kind of fast, but certainly not a sports car. Same thing with this car. But again, the Japanese over there at Toyota figured it out, and they responded big time with the next generation Supra, and that was a whole different story. This generation was long in the tooth, heavy, and just wasn't ready. Was not ready for prime time.
What year did that Nissan get the makeover to the more contemporary 300Z?
So hold on. So we're talking about 300Z or ZX. So are we talking about Z? So are you talking about this white one here?
No, the one after it.
The one after that was 1990, but they were available in 1989.
That's what I thought. Okay, cool. Yeah. So 89, 90. So this 91 looked very old fashioned.
Oh my God. Yeah. It was so 80s, whereas the 300ZX was the 90s. The 300Z was that was the epitome of the 90s design. Everything else kind of followed that swoopy air tunnel, kind of design.
RX-7, the 944 or 968.
The Supra, everything after the 300Z was kind of like, oh, that looks like a 300Z. But back to this Supra. Now, I'm dogging all over it because of the cars that it was against, but that doesn't necessarily make these Supras a bad car. Our good friend Rami Mirza, this was his first car. This was the and I want to say it was the same color. No, I think his was white on burgundy or something like that. But yeah,
trying to imagine how many clutches he went through trying to make that car. Spin the tires.
Throw some suspension on this car, and it's transformative, but it's still going to be heavy, and it does have some power. It will get you around, but boy, there were better options at the time. The name Supra, because Supra has become such a big deal from Fast and the Furious, has affected the values of all the older Supra.
Yeah, Paul Walker, quite the tastemaker with the orange Supra from the original Fast and the Furious. That would they call it a 10-second car? That was pretty cool cachet. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
So, what is your bid on this car?
Okay, so like I said, very little action on Bring a Trailer, which is a kind of surprising for something that again could be Radwood Gold. It's sitting at $16,000, and I want to say that this car has 4.5 hours left, but just not a lot of action, John. I don't think this car is going to break 20 grand. I was saying originally 19,500, but I'm actually going to take 500 off of my bid and just go 19,000 bucks.
All right. I mean, the miles are really good. It is a turbo, but yeah, these are not the Supras that these are not the droids we're looking for. So I'm going to go under and just say, what would you just say? What was it? 18.5? 19? Okay, I'm going under. I'm going to go 18.5. I'm with you. I think it's going to stall out here, even though it's on the correct platform. Dollar for dollar. I mean, if you just put blinders on and somebody said, "Hey, which car do you want?" I would take the 300ZX.
Yeah, I gathered that.
Wouldn't even bat an eye.
And it sounds like you might get a better car for less money, which is crazy, right?
I agree.
So there's your juxtaposition. Sure. Cool. Okay, so we're going to look at one more Japanese car, but this is not a sports car. We're going to go back over to Bring It Cars and Bids for just a minute and look at a Frank Collins Porsche Technician approved 2006 Honda Element EXP all-wheel drive. Frank bought one of these cars and swears by it. And I would walk into work every day at the Porsche dealership in Las Vegas, and I'd come through the garage to say hi to him as he's the classic tech and I was the classic salesman. And and he would just look at me. He goes, Michael, my Honda Element is the best car I've ever owned. And I'm like, how can you talk that sacrilege BS to me while we're standing here amongst all these incredible Porsches? And he goes, you don't understand. It's incredible. So I just thought we should look at one in this Kiwi metallic. It looks like metallic Kermit the Frog. These are 2.4 liter inline four, all-wheel drive, 5-speed manual. These are kind of crossovers, JP. They've got a regular size front door, but like a half size utility rear door. They are 4 seats, but those rear seats fold down. And because they're all-wheel drive, you can own this car anywhere you want in the United States, and it'll get you there. Honda reliability, incredible utility, and wonderful economy in a 2006 Honda Element. This one's got 70,000 miles, and it's offered out of Roanoke, Virginia. What do you think? Have you ever driven one of these? Would you ever be caught dead in one?
I remember in 2000, I want to say 2, I bought my first, I think it was my first brand new car ever. It was a Land Rover Discovery 2.
Yeah.
And that thing was super cool, right? But imagine a 2002 Land Rover Discovery.
Yeah.
Very few of them are still on the road. They're all piles of junk. They fell apart. They're garbage.
Right.
This car was its contemporary. I represented a Honda dealership at the time, and we made commercials for a bunch of Honda dealerships. And I remember looking at these, and it was so cool because like this idea that you could open these, they had the kind of like suicide doors that open up on the side, kind of like the old vans that I grew up with, where they had the 2 doors that opened up like
free
barn
candy
doors. But these seats folded down, and they had the rubber floors there, and you could just hose out the interior. I remember thinking, God, because I was a young producer back then. I was producing a lot of content, throwing gear in the back of our, back then producing videos and commercials and stuff required a lot more than it does these days. Like we had boxes and boxes of gear and bags and stuff. When we went out to shoot a car dealership commercial, we had, the whole back of this land. We'd have me and someone, me and my PA would be in the front seat of the Rover. We'd have the back seats folded down, and the entire back of the car would be full of camera gear. It was like just to go shoot some stupid little thing, lights and junk, right? Now it's like you could do everything with an iPhone. But there it was. I remember this car going, golly, this probably from a utility point of view, this little Honda thing is probably the better car, but it doesn't look cool, so never mind. But, these things, yes, they go forever. No, I've never owned one, but I have driven them. I tell you what, every production assistant in LA has one of these because of just exactly what I said. They are the most utility driven vehicles on the planet. And they are, you look for one, they all have 250,000 miles on them because they just they're basically a big boxy Honda Civic that will go and go and go, and also has all the utility factor. They even make like tents that attach to the openings, and you can have like a little bivouac camp out wherever you want. Yeah. Pretty
in
amazing.
The 3 years I worked with Frank at the Porsche dealer, Esther, my wife, was driving their 2002 Audi S6 Avant, which she loved to drive. But that car was just falling apart. And I would come in and complain about the state of that car all the time to him. And he kept saying, Michael, you ought to buy her a Honda Element. I'm telling you, just drive it. She'll love it. And it's great for the dogs, and it goes anywhere, blah, 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 blah. So when I saw this one, I thought of him, and I thought we should take a look at it.
I don't think there's a better dog vehicle.
Oh my God,
especially
right?
You have big dogs that shed and all that stuff. This is a rubber interior. Just sweep it out.
Totally.
How awesome is that?
Yeah. So I showed her the car. I said, would you ever drive this? And she goes, no. So anyway, that took care of that. 5 bids. 5 bids, but it's already at 12,500, presumably because of the low miles, 70,000 miles. And as JP was saying, all the ones that are used for true utility are being driven into the ground with 200,000+ miles. So JP, I think this little car is going to make it. I had said 14, but it's already at 12. It is on just 5 bids. So I'm gonna stand on my bid at $14,000. Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, it's sitting on Cars and Bids, which is, a platform for 80s, 90s, and modern enthusiast cars. So this is definitely not an 80s or 90s car. Is it a modern enthusiast car? Can this be even
No,
classified as an enthusiast car? I don't know what it's doing on
come
the
on,
platform.
Doug. Come
But
on, Doug.
that said, it seems to be finding an audience because 12.5 is pretty high for one of these. I would have
Right.
thought that the place to sell this would have been the local offer up or Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or something like that.
Yeah.
It's in Vermont. This is an all-wheel drive one. Many of them are just two-wheel drive. This is a manual one. So
Right.
I think that limits the market. Most of the people that are looking for one of these want the automatic. So the manual aspect of this is the only thing that makes it qualify as anything remotely close to enthusiast. So
This one's in Virginia,
yeah.
Roanoke, Virginia. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yes, there's snow in Virginia, so they're gonna.
Right.
This is definitely a vehicle that makes sense there. If you have a really nice Porsche and you're putting it away for the winter, this would be a great thing to get around in and not worry about if you wind up in a ditch. What did you say your bid was, Michael Deeb? I'm sorry.
$14,000.
$14,000 with just under an hour to go. Do I bet the over or under on this thing?
Uh-huh.
It is not a lot of action, but it is getting some action. I'm gonna bid the under, like right the heck under. I'm gonna go 13.9. I'm going right under you because I think
All right.
you're spot on.
Okay.
We might get a draw on this one.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
All
Cool.
right.
Cool.
All right.
All right. So the next two cars, JP, I'm very excited about. So first one, let's go full Metzger. We're gonna go to Bring a Trailer and look at a 2008 Porsche 911 Turbo Coupe with a 6-speed manual. This is a 9971 that's got 7,600 miles. We're there in Mount Kisco, New York. This car is GT Silver with the most expensive interior option. The cocoa leather is actually a different grain of leather. And so if leather interior was a $2,800 option, the cocoa leather would have been like $4,000. And the full cocoa leather means the doors, the dash, the seats, and it's just a really beautiful leather. And I personally, that dark brown was sort of like the gray or silver stitching on a GT Silver car. This car really gets me going. There's a photo, JP, right on the front before you get to the Carfax, and it's a picture of the motor from underneath, and you can see all the factory cosmoline is still underneath this car. So the cocoa leather and the factory cosmoline kind of leads me to believe that this car has been looked after and pretty well cared for despite the low miles. Also, there's a discrepancy on the way the Carfax reads. This is a one-owner car out of Mount Kisco, New York. We're talking 480 horsepower and just over 500 pound-foot of torque from the GT1 Metzger engine. There you go, John. Is that not the ultimate badass Porsche? Like, come on.
I mean, yeah, Turbo 997.1 is just such a wonderful car with a manual, the 6-speed. Yeah, I mean, these cars kind of dipped down in value for just a minute, and there were some really good deals on these for a while, but now they're just creeping back up. And if you missed the boat, you missed the boat. I don't think they're going to be cheap again for a while unless you find one that is just
miles.
Super high miles. It's interesting too because we always talk about stick versus manual. These cars with a manual, we haven't got to the numbers yet, but we're looking between $70,000 and $90,000 depending on miles with a manual. Whereas with a Tiptronic, they're in the 50s, the same miles. I mean, it's that big a difference. Yeah, I absolutely love driving these cars. I remember the first time I got to drive one, it was just like, woo! I literally, my buddy bought one, I got to drive it, and like a week later, I went and bought a 996 turbo. I couldn't afford a 997 turbo at the time, but I went and stepped up to a 996, which was as close as I could get. And man, such a great car.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So this car is sitting, JP, at $86,500, which is quite a bit of money. Again, it's a one-owner car, even though the Carfax sort of suggests it too. This car, Jan, did you look at this? 33 bids on Bring a Trailer. I mean, we just haven't seen a car with this much action in a while. So there's a lot of commentary on it. The community is being very kind to this car. And I think the current bid is a reflection of that. I think this car is going to come really close to $100,000 with an hour and a half to go. So What's interesting between the 996 and the 997, I mean, these are essentially the same motor, JP, right? It's still the same
Yep.
3.6 twin turbo. For me, the biggest difference is
It's the same chassis too.
It's basically the same chassis.
Yep.
This car has 6-piston front brake calipers on the steels, whereas the 996 just had 4 pistons. So this car's got superior brakes, but otherwise, there's not a lot of difference between the cars. I mean, that's about it. Right?
I mean, just a cosmetic upgrade and some stiffening of the chassis and all that kind of fun stuff, and obviously a huge difference when it comes to the interior style. That was something that people really didn't like about the 996. Regardless of there's a massive styling differences, but not a ton difference when it comes to performance.
Right, and no sticky buttons on this one. So that being said, JP, I'm going to give you my bid.
I'm sorry, but that's just not the case. This is this is a sticky button car.
Yeah, they do have
2009 would be the
cutoff point.
The 0.2. Yeah.
There you go. Bid Nerds exclusive.
Yeah, little Bid Nerds. You get a sticky button on these. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know the little stereo. There's 2 little stereo buttons. I should probably pulled up a picture of it. But there's 2 little stereo buttons. Maybe you can see them on this picture. They're right there. You can see my cursor. There's one on this side and one on that side. The black stuff comes off of those. Same thing on the dials for the temperature there. And you know,
and then you can't see the button, right? It just goes blind.
It just looks terrible. You can get them on eBay, like just the stereo buttons. You get a pair of them for $50. That's how much it costs. And then the factory ones are like $180 for a pair. It's like unbelievably stupid.
Sorry to laugh in your ear, but that was
there
funny.
You go.
$50. Good God. Okay. Well, that being said, JP, last night this car was at $80,000. And with 90 minutes to go, it's already crept up to 86.5 on a lot more bids. So I just feel like that they're chumming the water for this. I believe this car will break $100,000. Nice. I'm going to say $104,000 is my bid. Yeah, I think this car, it's got everything going for it. Low miles, Cosmoline, stick shift, the color, the leather. I think this, and it's a one owner really. So there you go. 104,000 is my bid. I'm
with you. I think the color combo, everything you just said. This is the car if you want a 997 turbo. If it were .2, it'd be unbelievable. But getting over 100,000, that's still kind of a big deal. I'm gonna say 100 and say it breaks it barely. I hope to see it go high. I don't know. Do I hope to see it go higher? This is a car I actually want one of these, and I know, this was a car that used to be an opportunity, and now it seems like they're creeping up. Now this is a super low mileage one. I don't know if I would buy one this low miles. Would probably be looking.
We should tell our audience how terrible these cars are on tires. I mean, these are bad investments. You'll go through so many tires. You're not going to like it. You'll be very upset.
It doesn't matter. We can't. It's already out of our budget at 86,000. So wherever this thing goes, it's not going to be in my garage. All right. Yeah. Love this car. Let's move on to the last car.
Okay, last car. So JP, I had this magic moment with Ben, the professor, last March, or actually, was it this March? Yeah. So we were at Rod Emery's shop, and we were at the. You and I had driven out from Vegas together for the Toy and Lit, right? So we met up with Ben, and we went to Emery's event at his workshop. And up on that one side of the shop, they have all of the donor cars and the customer cars that are in the queue to get work done, and they're in varying states of dismantle. And he walked through and went through the difference between the A's, the B's, and the C's with the 356s, coupes, and convertibles. Alfa has a similar thing, and the 1959 is the transition year between the 750 chassis and the 101s. Now, while I haven't had that magic moment with Rafi, my Alfa guru, Rafi Najarian out here in the Bay Area, to kind of go through and look at the cars side by side to be able to pick out the physical differences. I know there's a big difference in the taillights between an early 59 and a late 59, and that is the easiest way to tell the difference. But this car, being a 59, is interesting because it's an early and one of the last of the 750, which would make it a more valuable car. So this is a 1300cc twin cam motor with a 5-speed manual. I think it might have a 4-speed. Let me read it now real quick. 4-speed manual. Some of these cars did have 5 speeds, but this one does not. This car is also a Veloce. The Veloce is sort of the upgrade, kind of like the S version in Porsche speak. So this means it's got dual carburetors and a hotter cam. There might be some other differences that I'm not aware of. I still don't know my 50s Alfas as well as I know my 70s and 80s. But this is a very desirable car, being that it's a Giulietta Spider. It is a 750, and that it's a Veloce. And so these have really these were $35,000, $40,000 cars for decades in the 90s and early 2000s. But in the last few years, these cars have really jumped in value. And what we're looking at here is a car that probably should be worth over $100,000. But there hasn't been a ton of action on this car, which is sort of surprising. It's only got 7 bids. And so I'm wondering if it's going to, instead of being a $125,000 or $130,000 car, I'm wondering if this car is going to break $100,000, despite it being a former show winner for its originality. It had an early repaint in its life, and then it's been really, really well preserved since then. And it won Best in Show at Concorso Italiano during Monterey Car Week. Several years ago. So this is a really cool preservation example, and a car that's been really well looked after. And also the community, reading the comments, the community seemed to know the seller, and people he seems to be like engaging but soft-spoken. And the community in the comments are really saying nice things about him. In other words, whatever he says, you can take it to the bank because he's a really stand-up, trustworthy guy. So I just thought that was really interesting thing. This car is offered out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's at $67,000 with 2 hours to go. But a 750 Veloce should be a $125,000 car. And I am suspect that this car is going to make it there. Very cool car.
What's your bid?
Let's see. I think I said $95,000, and it sells at that price.
You think it sells at $95,000? All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is an amazingly beautiful car, no doubt about it. I love that it has that history. I mean, winning Le Mans, not Le Mans, but Monterey Car Week, right? Yep.
Yeah. Concorso Italiano.
Italiano. Wow, that's a big deal. Yeah, I'm going to go just a little under. I'm going to go $1,000 under you just because I think that's a lot of money for this week. I think selling this car this week is probably a bad idea. It would have been better to wait a few weeks on this thing, but what a beautiful car. It's funny how much the interior, especially the dashboard, reminds me of a 356. You brought up the 356 at the beginning, and it really does look the same.
Yeah, so
big dials.
Pininfarina did the Giulietta Spider, which we're looking at. I believe Bertoni did the Giulietta Sprint, which is the coupe version. And the Sprint and the 356, they were absolutely arch rivals on the racetrack after World War II. In every manner or category under 2 liter, Alfa and Porsche were neck and neck. They would fill out the first 5 or 6 spots. And the cars were in some ways kind of affordable. So if you were a grassroots sort of amateur racer, you could afford to buy an Alfa, or you could invest in a Porsche and have a car that you didn't have to do a lot of modifications to go out and drive the snot out of those cars and really be competitive and have fun with them. And you could drive the car to the track, race it over the course of the weekend, and drive it home, which is amazing because you wouldn't think of doing that today outside of just doing like a track day in an M3 or a 911 or something like that.
Well, all right. I mean, we are going really long on this one. This car is unbelievable, but I think we're going to have to wait for another one to come up to learn more about them.
There we go.
All right. That has been another edition of the Bid Nerds. Thank you very much for watching. This is your daily nerd out and the most interesting cars on Cars and Bids and Bring a Trailer. We'll see you tomorrow.